Okay, welcome back for a new video. Today we're gonna do an engine removal on this Kawasaki ZX6R. So the reason why we're doing this is because the oil and water pump broke. So I already removed some things. But luckily we have almost two more engines. That one just need cams in it, and also the gearbox. Then we have two more engines ready. So the first step is removing the fairings. I've already done the side fairings, and I'm gonna remove the seat fairing. Then we're gonna, like I done already, also remove the sprocket because I needed to get clearance to remove and see the water and oil pump, but it's broken, so I just put it back in, and then we're gonna get a new one, and maybe we can fix the engine in that one. Yeah, so I've done the sprockets and the side fairings, but remove all the fairings, and then I see it in the next step. Okay, so the next step after removing the fairings is going to be the fuel tank. It has one screw here and two screws in the front, and then you have the fuel hose underneath, and also the cable for the fuel pump. So that's going to be the next step. Okay, so I'm gonna show you where the fuel hose and also the cable for the fuel pump is. But before that, when you're doing this kind of thing for the first time, I've done it a couple of times, more than a couple of times. So it's a good thing to mark like paper cups with the bolts and nuts and things. So this is like for the fairings, this is for the fuel tank, and so on. And if you're doing it for the very first time, I recommend you take a picture before every step. So when you go back and do the installation, you won't be that lost. But I'm gonna do a video on installing the engine as well, because we need the one or of the two new engines in this. But back to the removal. So you lift up the tank like this, and you see the fuel hose and also the cable to the fuel pump. So I can't do this with one hand because I need to have the tank up. I can maybe put some like wood between there and there to have it standing. It will be easier, but I don't have that available right now, so I'm gonna just hold it up with one hand and disconnect the cable and the hose. Yeah, so that's the next step. Okay, so you remove the fuel tank, and now we're gonna remove the airbox. And before we start removing the airbox, we need to remove some electric wires on it. So we're gonna start from the top and work our way down. So if it's your first time, maybe you should mark the cables. Or otherwise, I would suggest taking photos or pictures of like where it is and what kind of cable it is. But it usually makes sense when you install it again, because on this kind of bike, every cable is unique. It's just for the fuel injection and for the ignition underneath the airbox. So that's the next step. Okay, so now back to removing the airbox. Remove one other fuel hose from the injection pipe that goes underneath the airbox. Then you will remove all the cables, like I showed before. Then you have two holes in the frame, each on each side, and inside that, a further bit in, I don't know if you can see, it's hard to see, but you have like 2 Allens. And then also you have this this screw, and you just need to remove those 3. You don't need to remove the top of the airbox, the screws around top of the airbox. So just those 3 screws you need to unloose to remove it. So that's the next step. Okay, so with the airbox you have kind of like a suction, so you have to wiggle it like back and forth, and it will eventually come off. So wiggle it, and then like a suction. So these are the screws right here, the element that goes through the frame. So one on each side of the bike. Yeah, so the next step after the airbox is going to be a lot of cables. So make sure you get every cable that goes to the engine off the engine. And also we're going to do the throttle wires. So you can do the whole throttle body, but I have extra throttle bodies, so I'm just going to leave it on the engine. But still remove the cables from the cable, the cable harness. Yeah, so that's the next step, and I'm going to show you how it looks when you're done with all the cables. And I usually put it to the side of the frame of the bike like this, so I make sure that every cable is off the engine. Okay, so we removed most of the cables, so it should look something like this. The engine should be pretty clean, but I've decided we're gonna remove the throttle body anyway, because so you get a, if you're gonna do it now, you know how to do it. So the throttle body sits with 4 clamps. So maybe you can see on my finger I have pointed at the first clamp, and then you have one further in there, and you have like small plastic plugs that puts the clamps in the right angle. So I'm gonna show you that when I have removed it, but loosen those as much as needed. Then you wiggle the throttle body back and forwards, so it's like a suction. So it pops up when you loosen it. So that's the next step. Okay, so I have removed the throttle bodies, and now you can see the clamps, how they are positioned, and you can see also the plastic plugs that gets them in the right angle. It's very important when you put them back that you put them in the right angle. So the next step now, when you have removed all the cables and the throttle body, is the radiator. So we're gonna remove all the hose that's needed. So that's this one, and this one, and also we're gonna remove this one. But before we do that, we're gonna empty the radiator on the coolant, and also at this point you wanna remove empty the engine on oil. So that's the next step, and I'm gonna show you how it looks when we're done. Yeah. Okay, so the radiator is removed. So the next step before we're gonna drop the engine is the exhaust. But also to get a little more space, I'm gonna remove the front wheel. So I'm gonna start with the front wheel, and after that I'm gonna remove the exhaust. So that's the next step. So I have removed the front wheel, and now it's on to the exhaust. So the exhaust have 8 nuts that press it to the top end, and also this clamp right here. So just loosen those and then remove the exhaust pipes. Okay, so we have removed the exhaust from the engine. So last check before we're gonna loosen the engine bolts. So make sure you have removed every cable and every radiator hose that you need and so on. And then the engine, what sits left in the frame, has two axles in the back. So one over here and one upper there. Then you have 2 in the front there and here. So what you need now is this thing. I think it's called a jack stand or something like that, not really sure. So you're gonna place it with some wood underneath. So I have that prepared. So one of those on the jack stand, if it's called that, and then I place it under like that. Then I start with loosening the front and the upper. But the trick with loosening this engine is that you need, with this axle, you need it to screw it in first, because you have like a adjuster that moves, hard to see, but I have my finger on it right here. So you screw it right first, so the engine gets loose in the back end. So that's because if you reverse it like you would with a normal bolt, it would just tighten the engine to the frame. So that's the first step. Then you start loosening the bolts and everything. So I'm gonna show you. Okay, so how you do it is we use some of this. It's like an oil for the threads that helps it crack loose. And then I have this long pipe to make like a longer breaker bar. So it usually sits pretty tight. So it helps to like crack it loose and screw it in a little bit, because maybe you can see it from up here where I have my finger, like there. It's like an adjuster to make the engine sit right in the frame. So you need to screw it in. Then now when we have the jack stand on and everything, we're gonna start with removing the front bolts. So that's the next step. Okay, so we're at the last axle with the engine removal. I'm gonna loosen the knot on this side. Feed it out. Other side. it in one of our cups, both with the twin bolts, axles. Okay, so now we're gonna gently lower our engine. Like that. Try to pull forwards like this. This side. It's heavy. That's how you do an engine removal for Kawasaki ZX6R.